If you're looking for keto roti recipes that you can have with your curries, here are a few recipes that you could try. All these rotis taste good with many different Indian curries. Indian curries usually have a strong taste because of the spices, so the taste of the roti doesn't really overpower the curry. Try these, you're not going to miss your wheat rotis too much. Here's a recipe of a roti that's made of coconut flour, and have this with some curry that has coconut milk in it. It tastes absolutely delicious. This roti is made of almond flour with psyllium husk as the binding agent. There's also a recipe of almond flour roti with xanthum gum as the binding agent if you prefer that. Here's a recipe of almond flour with chia seeds. There's also a recipe of keto naan that you can make with almond flour, and have this with some butter chicken or chicken tikka masala. It tastes amazing. If you like flax seeds, you can easily make keto rotis out of that. And if you're looking for a keto roti recipe that involves no kneading of the dough, this recipe is for you. I have all the recipes in detail for you. The time frames of each roti is in the description. All these rotis can be frozen. You can either freeze the fully cooked rotis or you can freeze the raw rolled out dough. Just make sure to have parchment papers in between so that they don't stick to each other. You can quickly heat them up on a pan or in a microwave. If you're looking for a keto roti recipe that is soft and pliable and that pairs well with a lot of different Indian curries, you're in the right place. Here I have half a cup of coconut flour, which is also 70 grams. To this we are going to add 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk, and this is 8 grams. I'm using the Sat Isabgol brand of psyllium husk. Next goes in half a teaspoon of salt, and now we are going to give the dry ingredients a mix. Next we are going to add in water, and the quantity of water is going to be 3 times the quantity of coconut flour. So this is going to be 1.5 cups of water. The water is room temperature water. You don't need warm water or hot water for this recipe. It might seem like we added a lot of water, but coconut flour absorbs a lot of water, guys. So this 3 times the water to coconut flour is a good ratio. We're going to cover this and let it rest for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, transfer everything to a plate or a mat, and we are going to add 1 tablespoon of any neutral oil. You could also use olive oil or even ghee if you like. I've used avocado oil for this recipe. Knead the dough for approximately 30 seconds to a minute, and you're going to see that it's going to come together very quickly. I'm going to divide this dough into 8 portions. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Subscribe for yummy keto recipes, keto Indian recipes every week. Alright, we are ready to roll the dough. I'm using these cookie silicone mats. I have a rectangular one and a circular one. You can of course use wax paper or parchment paper if you like. I'm going to grease both the mats with some oil because I don't want the dough to stick to it at all. It is easy to roll the dough. It is not easy to roll it in a circular shape. So I'm going to roll it, and then I'm going to use a lid or a bowl to cut it in a nice circle. You don't have to, it just looks nice. This is a 6-inch lid that I'm using, and this leftover dough that you have is going to end up giving you 10 rotis and not 8 rotis. The rolled dough comes off very easily from the silicone mat, and now we are ready to place this on a non-stick pan, and this pan has been heated to medium-high heat. It's going to take approximately 2 minutes per side for the roti to be completely cooked. You can see that there are little golden specks that come up. That means that that roti is cooked, and that's it. So as I said before, from half a cup of coconut flour, you're going to end up with approximately 10 6-inch rotis. These rotis are so tasty, guys, and they are soft. They are easy to make. I'm going to share a trick with you with which the dough is going to be very easy to handle. Let's make this together. We're going to start off with 1 tightly packed cup of blanched almond flour. This is 100 grams, and I'm using the one from Costco. Next, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk. I'm using the Sat Isabgol brand of psyllium husk that you can find in almost any Indian store. Next goes in half a teaspoon of salt, and we are going to mix all of this together. For this recipe, guys, we need hot water, and this is half a cup. I'm not adding all at once. Add a little bit at a time till it forms a dough. So I ended up using less than a quarter cup. Guys, don't add too much water. You will be surprised how little you will need. Now use your fingers and knead it into a dough ball. The dough is going to feel sticky at this point, but don't worry, we will fix it later. Let this rest for 5 minutes. So it's been 5 minutes. Now we have to get rid of the stickiness. So we are going to add in some oil. You can use any oil of your choice. I'm using avocado oil. You can use olive oil. You can use melted butter, ghee, whatever. And then you're going to knead it well. And you're going to see that it's going to end up being a lot less sticky. We need this because if not, when we're going to try to roll it, it's going to be a mess. I like using silicone mats. You can use parchment paper as well, but be sure to grease both the mats, guys. Grease it even if it's non-stick because we don't want the dough to stick. The dough tends to break easily. I'm going to tell you a trick how to avoid that. First of all, we want to take our dough ball and divide it into 4. You're going to end up making 4 to 5 rotis, so 5 using all the leftover scraps. Guys, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Consider subscribing for yummy Indian keto recipes. Guys, this dough tends to tear easily, so we don't want to roll it out too thin. This lid is 5 inches in diameter. I'm going to use that as a reference and not roll out the dough more than that. That way the dough is going to be at least half a centimeter thick and it's going to come off the mat quite easily. I rolled it out thin, guys, and every single time it tore. So roll it out pretty thick. But don't worry, our roti is not going to be that thick. I'm going to show you later how you can make the rotis nice and thin while you cook it. This is going to come out really easy now, guys. See how thick it is? Don't worry. If you want, you can make it even thicker. I'll show you how to make it thin later. Let's go. So heat your non-stick pan to medium-high heat and let it cook on one side. Turn it to the other side and now is the time to press the roti down using a ball of a paper towel. This is what I'm using. And you can keep pressing it, press it all you want. The roti is going to get nice and thin. This is the easiest way, guys, I found to make the rotis consistently without tearing them. Approximately 2 minutes per side and your rotis should be done. The rotis turn out nice and soft. Keep them wrapped up in a cloth so they stay soft and warm. One important point is to press down on the roti only after it is cooked on one side. Because as you can see here, I'm trying to press down on the raw side and it is sticking to my spatula, so don't do it. Combine 1 cup or 100 grams of almond flour, half a teaspoon of xanthum gum and half a teaspoon of salt. Give that a mix. Next, this is 1/4 cups of water at room temperature. We are going to add a little bit at a time till the dough comes together. I ended up using a little less than a 1/4 cup of water. Knead the dough with your fingers and not using a spatula. That way you can accurately gauge the amount of water you'll need to get the dough together. Next, add 1 teaspoon of oil and the dough should feel smooth and slightly stretchy like that. We are going to portion the dough into 4. You'll end up making like 5 rotis using the scraps from these 4. I like using these silicone baking sheets for rolling out the dough. You can also use wax paper or parchment paper. Make sure to grease both the mats, or if you're using parchment paper, grease that as well using oil because this dough does tend to be a little sticky. Don't roll out the dough too thin because it could tear when you try to lift it from the mat. And here I'm using a 5-inch lid to cut out the dough, rolled dough in a circular shape. Put together all these scraps, guys, you'll get another roti in the end. Okay, next we're going to use a non-stick pan, heat it to medium-high heat and just cook the dough for approximately 1 minute per side. As soon as you see some brown marks come up, the roti is done. If you overcook it or if you cook it on low heat, it's going to be very hard. So make sure not to overcook it. This turns out slightly soft, slightly flaky, and it has a neutral taste. We are going to start off by grinding 2 tablespoons or 20 grams of chia seeds and make sure to grind it as fine as possible. To this, we are going to add 6 tablespoons of water. This is room temperature water. It does not have to be warm. Very soon, you'll find that the chia seed powder turns into this gel-like consistency. We are going to let that rest for 10 minutes. Next, we are going to add in half a teaspoon of salt. We are also going to add 3/4 cups, or it comes to like 72 grams of almond flour. We are going to add it a little bit at a time while kneading it with your fingers. Guys, make sure that you press down on the dough, and wherever it feels like jelly and sticky, cover it up with almond flour. If the dough remains very jelly, it is going to be very hard to roll it out. But you will soon start to feel that the dough turns out into this more stretchy kind of consistency. Like that. At this point, we are going to add in 2 teaspoons of oil. You can add any neutral cooking oil of your choice. Knead this for about 20 seconds or so and let the dough rest for 10 minutes again. And after 10 minutes, the dough feels very rollable. Is rollable a word? Now we're going to portion this into 3. Guys, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Consider subscribing for exciting keto Indian recipes every week. I like to roll the dough between these silicone cookie mats. If you have parchment paper, that will work perfectly too. But please make sure to grease both the mats with oil. If not, this dough is going to stick. I have done it without greasing it and I was not happy. Guys, if you prefer written recipes, I also have a blog. Please check out the link in the description. It is easy to roll out the dough and the mat comes off easily too if you greased it. And now I'm using a 6-inch lid to give it a circular shape. With this leftover dough, you're going to be able to make another roti, so this recipe should give you 4 rotis in total. The roti comes off easily from the mat. Place it on a non-stick pan set on medium-high heat. We will cook it on either side for about 3 minutes or so. The way I know that the roti is done is when I start to see these small little golden specks coming up like that, then it's done. If you overcook it, the roti is going to turn firm and crunchy instead of this soft, nice roti. You can use it as a taco shell in that case. We will start by preheating our ovens to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. So into a microwave safe bowl, take a 1/4 cup or 30 grams of mozzarella cheese, 2 teaspoons of plain unsweetened yogurt. We are going to heat this in the microwave for approximately 20 seconds or so, or until the mozzarella cheese has completely melted. Using a spatula, let's bring everything together so it forms like a pasty dough-like consistency. Into that goes in 1/3 cup of tightly packed almond flour, which comes to approximately 40 grams. Next goes in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a pinch of garlic powder for more flavor. We are going to knead all of this into a dough, and it is much easier to do it with your fingers. It's not going to work with a spatula. Very soon the dough will come together and it's not going to stick to your fingers anymore. Guys, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Consider subscribing for yummy keto recipes every week. This quantity of dough would be enough for 2 naans. Just shape them into balls and we are ready to roll them. I'm going to roll them on a silicone mat so they don't stick to the mat. You don't need to grease the mat before you roll it. And usually naans are in like a oval shape, so when you see the dough breaking a little, you can use your fingers to just maintain that oval shape. That is, if you want to. Make sure to roll out the dough slightly thick. Just to give you an idea, this naan is approximately 6 by 4 inches wide. Place the naans on a baking tray that is lined with parchment paper, and we are going to bake these for approximately 5 to 6 minutes, or until you can see that the naans have puffed up a little and these little brown marks come up. And while the naans are soft, guys, slather them with some butter and also sprinkle some coriander leaves. You could also add some crushed garlic for extra flavor. They were flaky on the outside, slightly soft on the inside, just the way naans should be. Don't bake the naans too long, guys. 5 to 6 minutes and you'll have these perfect soft naans. The best part about these rotis are that they have almost negligible net carbs. We're going to start off with half a cup of flax seeds and we're going to grind them into a fine powder. Flax seeds are really easy to grind, guys, so you're going to have pure flour very easily at home. This powder looks a little bit coarse, so I'm going to grind them for 10 to 20 seconds more and then it's going to turn into this nice fine powder. The finer the powder, the better the dough will bind. To this, we are going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and some hot boiling water. We are using a 1/4 cup of water. The quantity of water is usually half the quantity of the flaxseed flour. So if you start with a cup of flax seeds, then use half a cup of hot water. We will let this dough rest for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, check if the dough is sticky. If the dough is crumbly, you can add a couple of teaspoons of water, but if it is sticking together, you're good. Knead it a little and then add 1 teaspoon of oil. I'm using avocado oil. You can use any oil of your choice. And now we're going to knead it well for approximately 45 seconds to a minute. Portion the dough into 4 and we're ready to roll them out. You can either use silicone baking mats or you can use parchment paper. Make sure to grease both the mats or both the parchment papers so that the dough doesn't stick. Don't roll out the dough too thin, guys. It could tear while you are taking it off the mat. But the good thing is flax seeds are sticky and the dough tends to stick together, so it doesn't tear that easily. You can roll it out to like a 7 to 8 inch roughly circular shape and then cut it out using a 5-inch cookie cutter or a lid. This is a 5-inch lid. You could also use a 6-inch lid, but don't roll it out too thin. If your mat is greased well, the dough is going to come out really easily, no problem. This we're going to place on a non-stick pan, and this pan has been heated to medium-high heat. This roti, guys, would take like 1 minute or 45 seconds to a minute per side to cook, not long. If you cook it longer, it's going to turn like flaky. So if you prefer soft rotis, don't cook it too long. If you prefer a little hard, flaky rotis, cook it longer. These rotis turn out tasty, they are soft. You just combine the ingredients in a bowl, add the batter to the pan, press it down with a spatula and your rotis are ready. We will start off with 50 grams or half a cup of blanched almond flour. I am using the brand from Costco. To this we'll add 1 tablespoon of psyllium husk. I am using the Sati Sab Gold brand that you're going to find at almost every Indian grocery store. Next goes in a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and half a cup of boiling hot water. Guys, the water needs to be hot. We really want the psyllium husk to gelatinize and combine very well with the flour. Give it a mix and we are going to let that sit for 15 minutes at least. 15 minutes of resting gives the dough enough time to form a nice sticky pasty dough so that later we can press it down with the spatula and make our rotis and it's not going to tear. You should absolutely use a non-stick pan for this recipe and grease it with some oil or melted butter for sure. Do not turn on the heat as yet. We are going to take half of the batter, place it on the pan and start pressing it down with the spatula. You can sprinkle a little bit of oil on the dough so that it doesn't stick to the spatula and you can press it down a lot more easily. Keep pressing it down with the spatula so the dough gets thinner and thinner. As you can see, guys, this spreads really easily. It does not make holes. Even if there is a tiny hole, you can easily just fill it up. I can show you here. Yeah, there's a hole there. You just press it down with your spatula and it gets covered up. I'm just giving the roti a little bit of a circular shape, and now is the time to turn on the heat to medium. Don't turn on the heat while you're pressing down on the dough, guys, because it's going to start to cook and then you're not going to be able to spread it as much. This roti is approximately 8 inches in diameter. It's nice and thin. Let the roti cook for 2 minutes or so. Touch it with your spatula. If it feels jelly-like still, cook it for another minute. Grease it with some oil and look for some little golden specks. You can already see that the edge over there is turning golden brown. That means we are ready to flip the roti. I'm going to slowly take it off the pan. This roti is thin, guys, so you can tend to tear it. So just be very careful while you're flipping it. If you are nervous and you think that the roti is going to tear, keep watching this video. I'm going to show you another way you can make this roti without tearing it. If you're using a good non-stick pan, you should not have any problems flipping it. And see, the roti is already cooked. It's nicely gliding on the surface of the pan, basically 2 to 3 minutes per side, and your soft roti is ready. Before making the next roti, turn off the heat and then use a paper towel ball that is dipped in cold water and wipe the surface of the pan. Repeat this twice so that the pan cools down completely before you're spreading the next roti. This is similar to what we do while we make dosas, right? Guys, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Subscribe for exciting Indian keto recipes. This is now the other half of the batter. I grease the pan is cool, and now you're going to press it down. Add a little bit oil so that you can press it down easily. And now we are going to press this down till it reaches approximately 5 inches in diameter. We are not going to make it too thin so that it's going to be easier to flip it. It's pretty thick, it's almost half a centimeter thick. But this is going to take a little more time to cook, obviously. So approximately 4 minutes or so. You can tell by touching the roti a little. If it's too sticky, you can't flip it. So it's still a little sticky, as you can see. So I'm going to cook it for another minute, and now it's coming off the pan. And this is going to be easier to flip than the thinner roti. Whichever method you need to use, just figure it out based on the non-stick pan that you have. So this I've flipped, but now we are going to make the roti thin. I'm using a dry paper towel ball, and I'm going to press it down on the roti and make it as thin as you like. If the roti tears a little, just press it down a little bit and the hole is going to be filled like I showed you before. So this is the other method that you can use, and in this method the roti may not tear. Okay guys, so these are the two ways you can make the roti. The best part of this roti is that it stays soft even when it is completely cooled down.